is the Rangers Journal Night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name is Doug, and we've got a little extra show for you this Sunday evening. For those of you that are lazing about and need something to do, we are here to entertain you. That almost rhymed. I'm quite pleased with that. This evening, I've got a couple of great guys on with me to chat tonight. We've got Jock here this evening. How are you getting on, man?
Not too bad. I've got the Northern Ireland game on in the background here, so I'm just keeping a wee eye on that. Just hope that they do well over in Germany here. They're doing 1-1 at the moment, so they're doing not too bad. But I mentioned to talk about Rangers because I've got withdrawal symptoms and it's only been a week.
Absolutely. International breaks can have that effect. And also joining us, we've got John. How are you getting on?
Not too bad, thanks. Not bad. Yeah, even for how bad the start of this season is, I am not enjoying this international break at all, and I want back to it one Saturday to come quite quickly.
Absolutely. I think Smoke in the comments here has got the right idea. He's getting drunk, so have an extra one on us because we have to stay sober at least until the end of the pod. Or at least that's what they tell me. So yeah, we're going to have a bit of a chat tonight about the next sort of set of fixtures. Obviously, we're in an international break. Currently, there will be another international break for another 2 games, I think, is in October. So we're going to kind of have a little look over the fixtures between now and then and what our expectations are of those fixtures, of the team, of Russell Martin, and where we'd like to be by that point. So sort of before we kind of jump into that, I'll ask the two of you kind of your thoughts on where we are right now. Obviously, we've just come out of our transfer window. We've got a few new signings in the door that we'll be wanting to see. Some people might have already seen Cornelius, who played for Canada the other evening. And we've obviously got the big signing, the big talking point that we've been discussing sort of over the last few days as well, Chermiti. Jock, if I start with yourself, what's your thoughts in terms of just where we are generally now, sort of post-window, in terms of where the team are sitting?
Well, obviously, table-wise, we're not anywhere near where we want to be sitting in the table. I do think that we're under no illusions this was going to be a difficult period on the park, but we thought if we could get points on the board, particularly leading up to the Old Firm game, give ourselves a chance. In the Old Firm game, I think everybody would sort of be happy, but obviously the leagues went the way it's went. We're sitting where we're sitting. We're struggling to do the basics really, and on the park, and that was evident in the final Bruges game where the basics just completely fell away, and we got absolutely hammered for dropping our standards and stopping doing the basics. So in terms of the team, yeah, it's good to see new faces in. It's what we're crying out for, and we have been for the last sort of 2 seasons. A good red out of the squad. It's been a decent summer in terms of getting players out, and also we've got new faces in. The jury's still out on many of these new faces, of course. Always will be the case. And then obviously a lot of eyebrows raised on the deadline day with the money that was spent, particularly on one large outlay. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks when we come back after the window, that's for sure, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on Russell Martin, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on this team as well.
Absolutely, and you've reminded me there, mentioning the Old Firm. I did mean to take a moment at the beginning to touch on a little bit of news from today, which was the Rangers women were involved in their Old Firm away to Celtic today and won by 2-0. So well done to them. Once again, showing up the men in terms of telling them how to do it. The women's team, of course, have been regularly winning trophies for the last couple of years, although the league has been a little bit elusive similarly for them as well. So well done to them this afternoon. John, what about yourself in terms of where the boys are? What's the situation and the thoughts for yourself?
I think a disappointing and frustrating start to the season. I think signing-wise, we've got that kind of turnover in the squad I think we all hoped for. Have we got the quality in? that we've been looking for? Not sure yet. I think there's some really positive signs in the squad that we've got some good players in. How we utilise them is up for debate at present in terms of getting the best out of them. I'm hoping that post-international break we start to see some tweaks in the system, how the players are utilised, and we really kick on, because and the one thing we took from last Sunday and the end of the transfer window is they're not in a great place. They're not the team that we've been up against the last few years. There is a real chance there to go and win this league, even with this bad start. You know that's still there to be won. So come back, crack on, put a good run together, and hopefully put some smiles in some fans' faces.
Absolutely, that would indeed be grand. So kind of to start us off then, I've got a slide here of the upcoming fixtures that we have, as you can see there, before the October international break. So we've got 3 league games, 2 Europa League ties, and a League Cup tie to traverse. And they're kind of neatly bunched. We've got 3 at home and then 3 away. So you'd like to think at a minimum you're looking at 3 home victories in a row. And then, given the teams involved, Livingston and Falkirk, Sturmgratz, a slightly tougher proposal away. But I don't know about. Oh well, I mean, I say I don't know. I'm about to ask you, but I'll stick with you, John. To me, that's potentially 6 winnable ties. And so at the very least, I'm looking. At the very least, I think we should be winning all of those, or we need to be winning all of those league ties. Obviously, to start trying to catch up. Hearts will be obviously a difficult game, but the other 2, I think, should be games we should be looking at and saying, no, those have to be wins. But even the European ties, if we want to progress in Europe, I think those are 2 games that we also need to be getting, as positive a result as we can.
Yeah, domestic games are non-negotiable. They all need to be won, not should be won, but need to be won. Genk at home to start in the Europa League. Couldn't have asked for it in a more favourable way. You've missed the 2 big teams, home and away, to get yourself going. So this run to the international break, I don't think I could handpick anything else in there to be more favourable right now. I think, to me, I think I said to you a few weeks ago, all roads lead to that Hibs game in the Cup for Russell Martin for me. I think that's the pivotal one. Result against Hearts and a result in that game that goes wrong for him, and there's just no way back.
Yep, Jock. We've already got a few guys sort of starting to put their thoughts out in the comments, and I'll start with Mr. Smith. He's put a couple of thoughts. He doesn't think we're going to do much against Hearts, and at the same time, if we don't, he thinks that will be the point that Martin's situation becomes untenable. Do you think it's as immediate as that game, or kind of like I think sort of John kind of implied there? Does he maybe have the Hearts in the Hibs game, and then if he gets put out of the Cup, that's it, or do you think that they're going to give him more time regardless?
I think majority of the fans, as agree with John saying that he's got the Hearts game, which previous managers don't last this long. Have never had a start like this. Statistically, he's the worst Rangers manager we've ever had. So he's the Hearts game is going to be a hard game. I said this, I think it was last week in our deadline day pod. I said this is arguably harder than the Old Firm game, because Hearts are in a better form, but they seem to be scoring goals for fun. And the Hibs game as well. Hibs game's a massive game because it's it's a quarter final of the League Cup. Hibs traditionally in the League Cup usually do well against us, or at least make a game of it. And if we don't perform in the Hearts game, we're there for the taking, I think, and Hibs will know that. So Hearts and Hibs back to back, and any if it's league games or whatever kind of games, is always difficult. Thankfully, we have both games at home, but our home form has not been great and hasn't been. It's been very patchy this last probably 4 months worth of competitive football. So Does he go with the Hearts thing? I don't know, because he's made all the soundings that he's got the backing and that this is a transitional period and he's going to they're behind him. The Old Firm draw probably didn't help matters in terms of board backing, but they've come out and backed him apparently from that. Back especially after the European game and the embarrassment that was, because that's what it was at the end up. It was an embarrassment. They've backed them there, so. I don't know why, but these guys, this is their man, so I take it that they're going to back him at least up until the next international break, and then if something happens and he does go, then we're falling into that cycle again where it's October, it's the next international break, and we've sacked another manager. 3 years in the bounce now? So I don't want us to fall into that trap. I really don't. But if results are dictating that and there's no change and there's nothing positive coming from these set of games, particularly 3 games at home, this is where we should be putting a run together. Things should start be clicking at this point, and we should start pushing forward and going into these away games. But I mean, it's all up in the air right now, really, isn't it? We're all just itching to see what happens against Hearts at home. We really are just wanting this international break to just disappear so we can just get eyes on it and then we can judge for ourselves.
Absolutely. John, I've got a comment here from Gordon that I think is quite fitting. It's tough because I want us to win, but I don't want Martin as manager anymore. So it's a bit of a catch-22. And I feel your pain there, Gordon. I think a lot of fans probably are feeling the same. If I put ourselves in the position of the owners right now, they've put this guy in charge. They want to back their man. I think they've gone into it saying that, or thinking that there was going to be some difficulty to start with, and so they've kind of accepted it. Although I think even they've said, I think even Thelwell said in his interview that it wasn't expected to be this rough. But fair enough, I can allow them that. They were going into it with expecting it to be a little poor. The European game, I mean, if you take it from that detached point of view, you can make the argument that, okay, fine, they are a good and regular appearing Champions League team. So yes, it was embarrassing, but maybe it was just a one-off, and that was just bad luck that we came up against a team of that quality. You could make that argument. I don't think necessarily loads of people would be on board with it, but you can make that argument. So they're sitting there, okay, the European thing, they're still in Europe, so they've got that, so they can make that argument. Going into this run of games, like Jock touched on there, the longer he gets without it significantly improving, the longer we might fit back into that that pattern of sacking managers. Whereas if he goes in the middle of this section, I would make the argument that it wouldn't quite fit the thing because we got rid of him early and we would still have a chance to save the league. Whereas most cases, I think they've kind of gotten to the point of no return league-wise, and then we've sacked the manager. What's your kind of thoughts on that? Do you think that this is the period for them to make the decision, and if they don't sack him after this, they just kind of have to give him the long haul? Or do you think that this is the period to make the decision so that we can still, as I say, potentially save the league?
I think
or save a chance of the league.
Yeah, I think this is the time. You look at those 6 games: 3 home, 3 away. You're 2 domestic away games are Livingston and Falkirk. We're not going to Pretoria. We're not going to Easter Road. We're not going to Tynecastle. This is favourable. You're right. The first part, you're saying, right, you've got 6 qualifiers in Europe. You're into a league season quite quickly. You're trying to bed new players in. You can almost forgive them for saying, right, we're going to give that first chunk up to the first international break, because there is a lot of things going on. But with this one, you've got all your players. You've had an international break to get them on the training pitch for 2 weeks. Yeah, that's what you were wanting. That's what you've been talking about. You're then saying, right, you've got a home league game. You go and get a win there. You've got a cup game. If you get the cup. And for me, that Hibs game is important, because I think any fan who is on the fence with this, I think these 2 games against Hearts and Hibs is where they will just fall off and they will just say, no, I am done. You'll have people who don't like the manager, who have seen it from kind of early doors in the European games who've went, no, this isn't going to work. Get out the cup to Hibs on the back of what we've seen so far, I think ends a lot of people's patience. So I think this run to me is do or die for him. If we get to the international break and he's still there and we've still not won a game and we're in that place, you're thinking, what is it? What is the straw that breaks the camel's back?
Yeah, I think Jock, John brings up a really good point there about the fact, and this is something I've sort of said as well, that he's got this period of training now with the majority of the group. Obviously, there is a handful that are away on international duty, but the majority of them he's got there to work with.
Yep.
And every manager says the same thing. Rangers, we've been lucky for the past number of years that we've been far in Europe, usually, up till or after Christmas. So we're playing 2 games a week every week, and that does have an impact on training. And I'm happy to give Martin that point as well, because he's been exactly the same. And I think that he touched on a lot of people have made that point about him having the worst start of any Rangers manager in history. No other Rangers manager in history has had that many Champions League games in their first X many games in their history as well. So I think there's a bit of give and take with that one. So to me, what John said there, I think is absolutely key. He's now got that time that managers want to have to work with the team. He'll work with them to a degree, and now he's got a couple of weeks to really bed and go, right, we worked a lot in pre-season. These are the things that are working. These are the things that are not. One list is longer than the other. And he can really focus on that. So I think now more than ever in that Hearts game, we need to be seeing those improvements. We need to be seeing those, at the very least, green shoots of something that's growing, so that, if the worst case scenario happens and he doesn't get that win, there's at least that they can go, well, at least this and this started happening. At least we pressed properly. At least they showed a bit of fight. At least whatever it might be, because he did get a little bit of that in the Celtic game, where the players showed a bit more character, a bit more bite in their tackles, and some of them just looked like they were more invested. And people did kind of give them a little bit of credit for that. So, how important do you think that aspect of it is going into these games?
I think you're going to get that though with an Old Firm game. That's just the bounce, it's the crowd, it's the atmosphere, it's the occasion. You're going to get that. The players obviously would have picked up on that, straight from the off. So that's part and parcel, because if players can't even do that in the Old Firm game, then they shouldn't be wearing a Rangers shirt. Simple as that. But I understand your point, and that he's got time now with them on the training ground and stuff like that. Like as you say, it's been from pre-season, it's been game, rest day, training, game, rest day. It's a cycle that us as a club just have to get used to now, because we're going to have to do it earlier and earlier in July, because of the way the coefficient is now, and the qualifiers that we have to go through. Unless we win the league, we can then rely on a 2-legged tie at the end of August to get you 40, 50 million worth of Champions League money. We have to go the hard way. So he's not going to get that time in the training ground. Now he has it. Like you say, we need to see things. We need to see improvements. We need to see a variety in terms of attacking, creating chances, because we're not seeing that. It's been pedestrian. We need to see the ball moving quickly. The only time I can say we've seen something positive in terms of what he's trying to implement was probably there was a 15-minute spell against Motherwell. That's how far back we have to go to try and find something that we've seen. And the ball was zipping about, and you could see, right, okay, this is what these boys are trying to do, but we've seen it once, and it's not that's not enough. Hopefully this new influx of players that he's got to work with, a new revitalizing of the squad can bring that out, because if he doesn't get a tune out of these guys, or as you say, start to see things progressing, what's the point? What's the point in keeping them on? Because there's no progress there, and we're just going to end up dropping more points. And as you say, in previous times when we've sacked the manager, the league's already gone at that point. It's about saving face. It's right, we've got 2 cups to play for, and as fans, we're just fed up with that. We know if the board had acted sooner or act sooner, given say what happens with Hearts, they would retain some sort of credibility with the fans because they're like, right, okay, we backed this guy, it didn't work, but we move on and we go we go down a different route, and we are trying to actively, as you say, save the season. So it's going to be interesting to see what they've worked with, if we can actually see anything though, in terms of movement, player positioning, patterns of play, variations in attacking scenarios. It's not only going to be us just passing the ball around the defenders all the time and coming back from whenever we're in a good position just for the sake of retaining the ball. There needs to be a bit more directness and a bit more cohesion in terms of going forward, because we just haven't seen it at all. And we're now, what game of games we're in now? Four league games. How many European games? And it's just we're just getting the same thing served up every game, and it's just not good enough, because this, ultimately this is where we're at right now, looking at the league table.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take this opportunity just to say, guys, if you're in the chat there, if you've got any questions for either of the three of us this evening, either about these games or just anything else, if you want, on this Sunday evening, feel free to throw your questions in the chat. I'll take a note of them, and we'll have a look at some questions later on. Also, I'll take this opportunity just to throw in please, if you're not already subscribed, do hit the subscribe button. Scotty loves it when we encourage you to subscribe. So, as I say, as with most channels, just over 50% of people watching tend to not be subscribed. So do click the subscribe button if you're liking what you're seeing. We do stuff 5 days a week, or more, as you're seeing right now. Plenty of content both before and after matches as well. We're currently as well looking to expand most of our teams. So if you're on X, you probably saw some of our ads this afternoon as well. So if you fancy joining us and being on this side of the lens, then do give us a shout. Whether you're experienced or are just thinking about getting started, we'd love to help you on that journey. So think of starting that journey with us at the Journal. John, let's we'll get into the weeds of the games now. I'm going to start us off, and I'm going to say that if we had to kind of put them into a kind of a hierarchy, for me, I think the Hibs game is the most important must-win. Partly, it's the only knockout match in the group, so to me, that makes it an obvious top one in terms of that cannot be anything but a win, because otherwise you're out that trophy. And the League Cup is a great trophy to gain momentum because you win it so early on, and it can really boost a tenure as well. It could be that could be a big swing for Martin if he was to pull that off. Obviously last season, wasn't last season before, when Clermont managed to win that, albeit he only had the final to navigate, but that was still a game that he still had to do it. And that gave him a lot of momentum, that and those early performances. So I think, if Martin is sitting there and wants to do the same, that's got to be a must-win game. If you were to pick for you, what's the next most important match there that he has to win?
The Hearts game. I think, given they are starting the league, they're the same. They're 6 points ahead of us. I think Hearts are going to be a decent team. I think they're going to be a good season, most likely. They're going to be tough, and I think it's the first opportunity to really put a marker down to say we are going to turn this corner. We can see those good moments of play. We can get more than 2 shots in goal for a game, and we can get a few goals in there. I think the Hearts one is the most important of the lot. I think it's a game that just can set the tone for the rest of them.
And if I was to come to you then, Jock, what would you put behind that? So of the next 4, which do you think's the one you would want to get a win in?
The next 4.
Aside from the obvious that they should all be wins, but
of course. I think it's a league for me. I think it's a Hearts game. If we can beat Hearts, that gets confidence. Right, we can beat Hearts. Right, let's go beat the other Edinburgh team now in the next game, and then they should be looking at the Hibs game, going, right, well, that takes us to a semi-final, a cup, one more game, and then we're in the final. Come on, That's just why these guys are coming to Rangers, to play for the chance to win trophies. So you've to kickstart your league campaign. Obviously, it's going to have to be the Hearts game for me, but then that breeds into then the next game, and then obviously the first European game at home as well. As John says, it's a favourable tie at home, which you want. You're missing out on the bigger teams in the group. And I say our last game, our first game in Europa League last season was against Betis, and we beat them 1-0, and it kind of got us out of a bit of a slump then as well, because we weren't playing well at the time. So those are the sort of games, win one, go win the next one, and then you go on the run, which is something that Russell Martin and this Rangers team desperately need to do. Otherwise, it's going to be a long 6 games there. if you don't win the first one, or if you struggle in the first one and then you maybe get through the second one, they need to start putting a run together. That has to be done. So for me, it's a Hearts game, because the league's the bread and butter for me.
Good look. So Hearts and Hibs must wins, absolutely. So let's say, for sake of our sanity, that happens. So we've beaten Hearts. Let's even say it was a good performance. Let's go totally crazy. Let's say it was a good performance. We beat Hearts. We beat Hibs. Going into obviously then the next 4 games, as I say, I don't think anyone can say anything else that we would expect to beat both Livingston and Falkirk. So if we focus on the European games, John, what's your overall expectation for Europe this season? I know for a lot of people, Europe is a mixed bag in terms of it's a nice to have, but they kind of ultimately don't care because they want to win the league. That's the be all and end all. And others have a more balanced sort of opinion of the 2 competitions. Where do you kind of set on that sort of spectrum?
I want to see us do as well as we can. Always do. Love a European night. Love a Thursday night at Ibrox. I think as well, Bruges away has left a bad taste in the mouth. So I think we need to see something more positive in Europe to get a bit of that feeling back, and to show some progress in that. So yeah, I think we need to be getting out there, getting good results, getting wins, getting points on the board. If we don't get through the league phase, I don't think I'll be as disappointed as I maybe would have been last season or the season before. I think we can be respectable throughout the league phase. Hopefully get through. If we don't, so long as we're pushing in the league, I won't lose any sleep over it.
Okay, I've popped a wee poll into the chat there to ask the question to the guys in the chat as well. If you care about the Europa League, and when I say that, I mean, in terms of, are you just happy to be in it and you don't really care where we go to because the league is all that matters? Or do you care and want to, like sort of John said there, get as far as possible? Where do you sit on that, Jock?
I think we've been spoiled with the Europa League over the last couple of years, haven't we? Since Gerrard came in, we've just never looked back. And it's just something that I think now, it's safe to say, I think we just take it for granted that we're going to do okay in it, because Ibrox for us in Europa League is pretty much a fortress, and the fans make it that, and it's that's why we get a lot of interest when it comes to European nights at Ibrox, because of obviously the fans and the things that we've done at Ibrox in the Europa League. So I think it's something we just have to embrace. It's part and parcel of playing for a football club this size. You have to play your league games. You have to play your European games. You're only going to get that 1 day break in between. And I think us as fans, we're just used to it. And I think the players will get used to it as the season goes on. Because there's not many of them have come from a situation at their other clubs where they'll be playing every 3 days the way that we do here. So for me, it's part and parcel of playing for this football club. Yes, it's a nice bonus. It's nice to do well, and it's nice to show that Scottish clubs can do well in this competition. I do think the onus now is on another team in Scotland to see how they cope, because over the years we've been slated as saying we've been playing against diddy teams, and these teams aren't in that any level. Well, let's just see how they get on.
Yep, I'll close the poll in a wee moment, folks. So if you've not put your vote in, then do put your vote in now. I'll just chuck in my tuppence while I give you your chance to put your votes in. For me, the Europa League's a big thing. For a couple of different reasons. I mean, I do agree that the league is the most important thing, and that's the thing we have to strive to win over and above everything else. But to me, I suppose it's a catch-22 because Europe, to me, is a big factor in us helping us win the league, because being in Europe will attract better players. You know, they say the same of like the big teams in the Premiership. You know, if they want to attract the best players to win the league, then they have to be in the Champions League. And the same, I think, goes for us. If we want to attract the best players we can to win our league, then we want to be in Europe in some shape or form. And I think the Europa League gives us a good footing to do that, because it's going to attract players that are, I think, more reasonable in terms of us buying. We're not at the point of being able to afford your average Champions League level player, for example, but I think we are now getting into a position where we can afford players that are sort of Europa League level, and that is a level that is going to win us the SPL. And that'll help us in terms of the transfer model as well, because you get those players in. Those players are going to want to play in the Champions League too. So, well, in fact, I mean, I want every player that comes to Rangers to be saying I want to play at the highest level I possibly can, because they should be striving for the best, because that's what we strive for. And if they're doing that, then that again will help us achieve our goals, as we then hopefully sell them on for multiple millions to whatever top 5 league they desire. So that's kind of my touch on that. Obviously, the money is great as well, and if you're in the Champions League, that will obviously only help things even more. But then the catch-22 is obviously that you then have to play those games in between league games, which makes the league games that little bit tougher sometimes, particularly if they are, obviously, Livingston and Falkirk, while I say they both should be games we should be looking to win, they're still teams that can cause you trouble when they're at home, and coming away from tough European games, that obviously has an impact. So there is that little bit to it. Okay, so I've cut off the poll there. Excuse me. So that was a good 70% odd. YouTube has decided not to ping. It normally pings me the final result. It for some reason has decided not to. I think it was 79% of you. There we go. Okay, I was a little bit high, 71%. So 71% care about the Europa League, 28% don't care at all. And that's a perfectly valid point of view to have as well, I should point out. But yeah, so most people in agreement with us there, chaps. So we must be doing something right. So good stuff there. Okay, so I thought I'd just touch a little bit on the sort of team itself. I've brought up this slide that I did for the full sort of squad review that pod that I did on, I think it was last Tuesday. If you didn't see that, then do go back and check it. We kind of go in depth through the whole squad in terms of the depth, the age brackets. We also look at their contract lengths and things like that as well in that pod. Obviously not going into any of that kind of detail, but I just wanted to touch on how we think, or how do we think Russell should be using this squad in comparison to maybe how he's been doing so far. So I'll start with yourself, John. Obviously, we've had one change to the squad. That's another piece of news that came out today. And that I forgot his first name. King has gone out on loan to was it Ayr? He's gone out to. So I believe that's on the as part of that new scheme. Because obviously King is in the Champions League, the Europa League squad as well. But as part of this loan scheme that the SPFL have put in place, we can recall him at any time. So if we have another European defensive crisis and need to throw King in at the deep end again, then we will have the option to do so. We can pull him back on loan. He could play a game, and then we can immediately put him back out on loan. So it's a little bit of a mini cheat code for using young Scottish players, which is a plus. But apart from that, let's just say that is the squad as is. So, John, is there any, if you had to pick a particular area that you think Russell Martin needs to be utilising better, what would you say it would be?
I think he needs to utilise his wide players slightly differently. And I'm going to focus on Oliver Antman here as the example. Ant-Man is somebody who wants to spring a line, get in behind, be more direct, and we seem to be asking him to play something completely different right now, something he's not comfortable with. I thought it was really strange last Sunday that we looked as if we were going to go more direct, and the one player who wanted that ball in behind is the player we took out the team, and we started moving Gassam around to fit Mikey Moore in, and nothing just looked comfortable at that point. So I think getting the best out of Oliver Ant-Man and perhaps tweaking how he wants him to play, I think that's going to be critical for us, not just this next kind of 6 games, but for the rest of the season, really.
What about for yourself, Jock? We've got a suggestion from Mays here that we should be playing 2 up top. Is that a system that you would support with our 2 new strikers, or do you think there's another area that he needs to be utilising better?
I think for me, I think it's the midfield. I think because it's the midfield's the engine really that drives the team forward, and it's just something that the midfield seem to be struggling with, because the midfield should be the ones that are spraying the balls around into our wingers, as John says, to get the best of them, and that's something we're not doing. And the midfield should be contributing with goals as well, but we just don't seem to be doing that either. And that's why we're struggling to create chances, because I think he needs to. To me, he needs to utilise the whole team. If I'm being honest, it's not. You could pick just one area, and you could probably talk about one area for 20 minutes, but then you'd be like, you maybe should be doing that with this side or that side as well. So if I was to pick an area myself, I'd go with the midfield, because I think there's so much quality in there, and we've seen that with Raskin and Diomande in flashes. And Cameron's obviously he's the star at the moment, because he's the one that's come in and really sort of been the most positive thing that we've had this season in terms of that midfield. Asgard, you're too early to judge, and Rice obviously he's still quite young, but he needs exposure. We need to see more of him. He needs to be able to play games, or at least get chances. But then again, if you're not in games where you're sitting comfortable and you can afford to bring your youth on, then he's not going to get that chance. So he'd probably be better going out alone. For me, it's the midfield. I think the midfield needs to be able to get a balance with that midfield, right? So it benefits the team going forward, and there's also, like I said, defensive side to that as well.
Absolutely good stuff. I think both perfectly good choices there. I think I would agree with you, John. I think I want to see more from the wingers. Gassam, and I was a fan of Ant-Man coming in the door, having seen him a bit in the Eredivisie, and obviously Gassam introduced himself as about as well as a player could. So I would like to see a bit more from them. I think they could be a really dangerous pairing on the wing. So I would definitely like to see that. We are the people. Bonus points for you for picking up that mistake. Danilo should indeed be circled in blue. I used this slide extensively on Tuesday night, and I don't think anyone else picked that up. So well done for you for noticing that. Totally deliberate mistake to test the viewers. That's exactly what it was. Got a comment here, John, from Mr. Smith. Now, not so much. I don't want to not so much pick up on the comment itself in terms of what if Souttar can defend. I think he has his moments, but the question that kind of inspired me to ask you is: do you think we're going to see as much of John Souttar moving forward? Obviously, we brought in Derek Cornelius, Canadian international from Marseille. He is a left-sided defender, centre back. He was touched upon in the Thelwell interview as being part of the thinking for backup for Magoma. However, I would imagine that he's probably been brought in to be a starter and centre back as well, because he's a more experienced player, 27, 28 years old. As I say, international player. He's played in a couple of different countries. And by all accounts, from what I've seen and read thus far, he does look like the type of player we need to be coming into defence. And if he is going to do so, it seems, he's taken up the position that Souttar's been kind of playing. but at the same time, Suter's also been captain of late. So, where do you think Suter will be sat in Muscle Martin's thoughts? Is he going to bump Jigga, or being the lone player, he's potentially the easy one to bump, but then at the same time, he's the one that's got kind of the Premier League potential, if you like. So, what do you think we're going to see as the kind of the regular pair in that centre back?
I think Giga and Cornelius, for me, is what I would expect it to be. I think Giga's got the pace to cover this high line that we're going to be playing. And if Russell Martin was willing to flip with that and change it a little bit, I could see where Suter could fit in here, even in a back three. There was chats about playing two up top. Could we think about going to a back three? I'm just not convinced Russell Martin would go to that. And I'm not, that's part of the problem. I quite like the idea of a back three. I think, it could work. But I don't see us doing it.
If you're playing a back three, which position of the pitch are you taking a player away from to play the extra defender?
Midfield. I'd go 3-4-3, personally speaking. I don't think we need two defensive or two deeper midfielders for 90% of the time in Scotland. I think going 3-4-3, far more attacking, pushing Magoma, Andy, another up on the right-hand side, two in the middle, and really forcing down the wings, I think would work for 90% of the time in the league. And I think some of those games away from home that you're going to have, having somebody like Suter there who can win those aerial battles, have Giga for pace, Cornelius left-sided, and just say to Suter, go and win everything in there. That's your job. You go and be that guy that's dominant there. I think he could do that. I don't see the manager doing that though.
Jock, if I bring you in on kind of formation aspects, it's a 3-4-3. I hadn't actually thought of that myself. Whenever people say three to back, I just automatically picture your back three and your two wing backs, and then your two and then three, I should say. But 3-4-3, I think is an interesting one, and the question I'll ask you, if we were to do that, would you do what sort of John touched on there and have fullbacks as so say for example Tav and Magoma as your two in that four, wide two in the four, or would you be more inclined to maybe have Ant-Man and Gassman in those positions, and then you could have, say, you could technically play all three of your strikers, then you could have Chermiti up top with Danilo and Miovski off him. You could do all sorts of different things, I think, with that kind of combination.
I think you could, but I think then you're going to lose. I think if you ask, say, Gassam and Ant-Man to do that wide role, then you're going to lose them kind of going forward, because you're asking them to do a defensive job as well. And from what we've seen, it's maybe not part of the current setup and what he's wanting, what Martin wants them to do. So it'll be interesting to see if they could do that role. I don't see why they can't, because it's just a basic just tracking back and just covering your man. But then whenever they're starting a counter attack, they're starting from deeper up the pitch, and then they've got more work to do essentially, don't they? If you try to get the best out of them. For me though, I don't know. At this point, I'd take anything that works, anything that's going to overload their defence and get in between them, because we've seen that against Victoria Pleasant. If we can get in behind folk into space, we can do damage. But the football we're playing at the moment is too slow, and it just works for your Dundees and St Mirren's just to sit back and just invite us onto them, because it sits them is siege mentality, just sit back and then hit us on the counter, and the goal that St Mirren scored against us was just a prime example of that. A simple ball at the top from us being in possession around the pitch, and they scored, and then we were scrambling, and we didn't look as though we had any ideas until it took Tavernier to come on to actually sort of try and drive the team forward, because before we weren't doing much. So I just want a system that, even if it's going to take a bit of time to work, but again, if we can see progression and we can see styles of play and we can see different things happening that's creating different types of chances for our strikers, because that's what we're not doing at the moment. We're not giving our strikers any real quality chances, quality balls into the box. They've had no service really in the first sort of 4 games of the season in the league, particularly. We're not going to score goals, and we're going to struggle, and it's going to take deflected goals and whatever to try and rescue us from late on in games. We should be going on the front foot, and we should be, at least creating chances for our strikers and our midfielders and our wingers. But it's just not the system at the moment. It's just not doing that. So I'm not a tactical person. I couldn't tell you what one's obviously going to work, but with players there that have great speed, there's players in the middle that are great technically. We need to be taking advantage of that, and we need to find a system that gets the best out of that, so we can hurt the other teams. It's just simple.
Absolutely. I think one thing we sometimes forget is that is to, and maybe this is overly football managery. I don't know, but I always feel like that we don't consider being, I'm trying to think of the right word, like non-symmetrical. I think a lot of the times when we talk about tactics, we often consider them kind of symmetrically. So try and pronounce that properly. So for example, we think about both sides of say a 3-4-3 would have to defend. I think you could play a 3-4-3 where, let's say, you're playing a team who's strong on their left but not particularly great on the right. So you could have your left side, say, with a more defensive player. So say you're playing Megama on that side to combat their stronger side, but then you play your attacking player on the other side, and you have them more push. So you have one side push and the other drop. So say this example actually works better the other way around. So let's say Tav's playing on the right, and you play Gassama on the left. Gassama is told just to pretty much attack, and Tav's there to defend, and he drops into the back three, and the back three shuffle into a 4 because you've got Cornelius there who could shuffle out onto your left. And you could do something like that when you're out of possession, so that only one of the wider midfield players is one that has, like, obviously both sides still have to defend, but you've got more onus on one side than the other combating their things, rather than necessarily saying, right, both of you two have to drop and be kind of wing backs. You could just say, Gassama, right, you're part of this 4, but you are primarily an attacking player. And then you kind of morph into a 4-2-4 when you're attacking, because you've got one player pushing up and one player pushing back. And that maybe means you then have, say, Ant-Man as one of the 3. I do agree with, I think it was Paul, forgive me if it wasn't, who said we'll never play all 3 strikers at once. We probably won't. That was a fanciful idea, but just throwing it out there. But yeah, you maybe have Chermiti and Miovski playing, for example, and then Ant-Man, and then your 4 becomes Gassama, Chermiti, Miovski, and Ant-Man in that sort of 3-4-3 kind of outlay. So, okay, so we'll come back to finish off on the main kind of point, which is, in fact, we don't really need a slide for it, I don't think. I think, we've covered that this is an absolute key period for Russell Martin. I've entitled this Realistic Targets on Martin's Fight for Survival, because I do think that is what he is entering into. He's had his time pre-season. We didn't play as many sort of public friendlies because he wanted to go down and spend time on the training pitch and drill his system. That was fine. That made sense. He did that. I'll give him the slack that, okay, players were being added as they went, so maybe that's contributed to things not being as great going forward. But he's now played games. He's had time. He knows the players better. We only signed an extra 2 in the last sort of bit of the window, and he's getting to work with them. So, or he will get to work with them before this period closes. So now is that period of time that he really must pick things up. Otherwise, as many have said, he will be on his way out. Jock, if obviously we looked at 6 games there, what's your absolute minimum if we're going to scrape the barrel? Because obviously I've tried to be optimistic, but I'm going to end being more realistic. It's not realistic that we're going to go into these 6 games and magically be great. So, assuming that there's still some cobwebs here or there to things to work out of the cogs, what's the minimum he has to do to get by?
To save his job, you mean?
Yep.
Minimum. Beat Hearts, beat Hibs. Start the run. get the first 3 points on the board for home game, right the wrongs of the Dundee game, put that exercise that ghost, as they say, and then get into the semi final of the cup. For me, that's the League Cup for me is a big cup because it's the time of season when you play the final is ideal because you go into the Christmas spirit. Perfect time to win a cup, sets you up for the sort of the New Year Old Firm Derby as well. You go on there with the high, and I think that sets you up for the rest of the season. If you can go on riding that high of winning that trophy, you can use that for the rest of the season. So for me, yeah, it has to be win this next 2 games, because that's better than what he's done so far in terms of the league. It's been draws and draws, couple of 2 wins in the Europa League, but that's it. Or not Europa League, Champions League qualifier. Sorry.
Stephen's got Martin could not get a tune out of a jukebox. I don't think he would do well with Gordon Jury either, but there we go. I couldn't help myself. John, what's the minimum for you? I think I'll take the leap and say you agree with Hearts and Hibs. So I'll maybe tweak the question actually slightly. Hearts and Hibs, we need to get results in. What do you want from the European games? And if you do have a different answer to the first one, then do add it. But
I think the minimum to the next international break is winning all domestic games, because I think you could beat Hearts and Hibs. See if you drop points in the 2 games against Livy and Falkirk, they won't have mattered for anything. I think he has to win all 4 of them. And in terms of Europe, I think undefeated in those 2 games. I think 1-1 and draw 1, win at home, draw away would be great, but undefeated certainly, because I think another bad result in Europe falling on for Bruges just creates this overall feeling of things are just not going in the right direction domestically and in Europe.
I'm going to say I think Hearts and Hibs are absolute musts wins, as I said earlier, the Hibs game in particular. Are must wins. And yeah, I think I probably would agree actually. I think we kind of need to win all these domestic ones. The other 2 games are just such winnable games. Although I said that about the first 3 when I was previewing the season and going, we've got a decent way to start before the over. That didn't work out well, but I think I would probably agree actually with that. Okay, I don't think we'll not waffle on any further. I think we've kind of covered all the main bits for this evening. Just remains for me to thank everyone who's come and joined us this evening. Obviously, this was a bit of a random pod that popped up, so thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to us. All your great comments and points of view, as always. It would be remiss of me to not say to like and subscribe. Scotty's handily thrown a comment in just as I was about to start it as well. If you're not subscribed, please do think about subscribing. It costs absolutely nothing, and you'll get so much content out of the Rangers Journal, 5 days a week minimum. We have pods going out, as you see. You get stuff sometimes at the weekend as well. And we've got a bunch of new stuff coming up, and I'm going to throw it over to Jock to tell you about some of that in a wee second. And as I say, we have pre and post match content in front of every match as well. So please do subscribe and hit that notification bell, which will tell you when our stuff goes live. And speaking of stuff going live, Jock, we have some new stuff coming. Do you want to tell everyone what it's about?
Yeah, so we're doing a members goal of the month and player of the month podcast at the end of the month. Try and do it every Monday after our main podcast that goes out on YouTube. So this is for your members only on our YouTube channel. Basically, what I'll do is we put out a Twitter post that allows our Twitter voters to vote for the goal of the month, and then during the pod on YouTube, the members get to vote for the Rangers Journal's player of the month. And during that as well, pod will dissect the goals that are obviously that were voted for, and we'll talk about the winner. And then at the end of the pod, we'll crown the Journal's player of the month. So it's just a way of getting you guys in the comments involved and just churning out more content for yourselves. So this will be me that we're running this. So just, as Doug says and as Scotty says, get over at the Journal Facebook channel and YouTube channel and like and subscribe and get joining, because I say it'll be a bit of crack and a bit of banter, especially whenever we had a barn months like August for goals, but we managed to scrape 4 there. So there's a poll there now on our X channel there at the moment. I'll put the link in the comments for you as well, just so you can go ahead and vote. I think Bajrami's leading that poll at the moment with his goal against Alloa. So go over, get involved, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow night at 9 o'clock.
Absolutely. So I guess we don't often plug the membership angle, but that is, as I say, something that will be members only. So for that one, that takes an extra sign up, so you can subscribe to the channel for free. Membership does have a small fee. I believe it's 99 pence at the moment. And as I say, if you sign up as a member, you get all that extra content that Jock has talked about, as well as a couple of other things. We do try and pop out extra pods onto that as well. There was a members video out recently about sort of transfers. So there's a backlog of stuff there that if you sign up as a member, you'll be able to get. And you also get nifty little badges. You might see occasionally there's some people in YouTube chat and they have little RJ badges. Those badges are membership badges, and you earn them for the length of time that you get a membership. You get different badges as you accrue as well. So a couple of little perks there if you fancy becoming a member. Then you can sign up for that as well. So it just remains for me to say, as I say, thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you to Jock for joining and explaining the new stuff coming, and a big thank you to you as well, John.
Cheers.
Ember. Oh, and look at that! Just as if to say, we got a wee pop up there to tell us Paul has been a member for 13 months now. So thank you, big up Paul, for being a membership for just over a year. So huge thank you to you. As I say, you guys can join Paul if you want to, and being a member of the channel. So it just leaves me free to say thank you from myself, and please remember that every night is a Rangers Journal night. Good night.